Hello. Can everybody hear me? Can anybody hear me? Sorry about the being late. Trying to find the chat here. I went and updated. Hey, what's going on? Actually updated Sony for life. Here we go. Getting some stuff going. All right. I actually updated my eCam. So if stuff doesn't go quite according to plan, well, that's part of the reason. Let me see here. All right. What's happening? If anybody's here, press a like. All I want to say is RP Mark II or Canon R Mark II. I'm literally this close to jumping over to Sony. All I want is all I want to say. All I want. Gotcha. Understand. Sony for life. Imagine a TV show supposed to start at 9 and they keep you waiting until 9:08. Hey, it was 8:03, Long Rider. I'm sorry. I really am sorry. Are you still here, Long Rider? Hey, I'm not the biggest offender. I will say that. I will give myself the credit of not being the worst, most late person on air. Did I already... Anybody here waiting? Long Rider's part... Oh, there he is. I'm not the worst offender, right? It's David Osler who's the worst offender of live stream waits. He'll be like 20 minutes late, and then he'll press his intro. I'm just kidding. David Osler. Sorry, just kidding. So who is here and who wants to talk Sony, Canon versus Nikon? Maybe not Sony and Canon together versus Nikon, because that would be unfair. I had all my different, I basically had been outside in the field with the camera, and so I had all the microphones and everything else on other things. So that was part of the wait. This is me checking myself. Osla on my shit list too. Who called it first though, Long Rider? That's what I want to know, because he comes out with that video bashing Sony. Not bashing Sony, okay? I think he was just a call to action more for Sony, kind of like my video was. And then I'm like, uh-oh, what's Long Rider gonna think about this? So what I want to do today, as everybody's kind of maybe hopefully flooding in here, yes, you started. I don't think that he even watches my channel much, so I don't think he got any ideas for me. But that being said, I did do a video that was essentially like the 5 things I dislike about Sony. I actually shoot Sony. I love my Sony a7S III. I don't regret the decision of purchasing it, but there's 5 things that I wish, that they would do a little differently or a little better. So I made that video. I actually made a similar video about Canon maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, but I don't know. I named it like Canon's 5 biggest weaknesses versus the 5 things I hate about Sony. So it was just a titling issue, but pretty much the same video. But it got some hate. It got some hate, mostly from Long Rider. So what I want to do today, and I'm so out of frame here. There we go. It's bothering me. So what I want to do today is kind of get y'all's input as well, and just kind of look at the field for where it's at. So thinking of, Sony, Canon, and Nikon, and where they're positioned right now. Who do you think is in the best, I guess, position to be like number 1 in the camera market over the next 5 years? So that's kind of like the premise. And number 2, who do you like? What do you think each camera company needs to do to, I guess, be the best version of themselves or get number one, if say in a perfect scenario? So starting off, I guess I will say, for me, I look at the field a little bit like Sony, if they want to. And I'm going to be chatting in. I mean, this is a live stream for a reason. But the way I look at the field is I think that Sony, they really have the biggest opportunity. And what I mean by that is they already own a sensor company that is very lucrative. They make some of the best sensors possible just because of that sensor company. They have cell phones who uses that sensor, and they have just the most money in general. And I think that they have probably the money for the best processors and probably just in general, most capital they can make this thing happen. So in a way, it is up for the taking with Sony. And that the question is, do they see it as lucrative enough to truly put more and more money into the camera industry to become number one? I mean, they're number one in mirrorless, but to continue to be number one into the future. The way I'm thinking about things with Nikon and Canon, I can kind of go into that in more detail, but I want to get some information from you guys so I'm not just talking to myself. So, if you're here and you hadn't hit that like button to get this more out to more people. Okay. So Long Rider, there you go. Going to be harder for Sony, Canon, and Sony, Canon, and Nikon have a huge legacy following. I think that that's true to a degree. I know that they have a huge legacy following. Don't get me wrong on that. But in the mirrorless market, Nikon is, I mean, if you look at just the sales, I mean, they've had some issues. And a lot of people who wanted to go over to mirrorless were done waiting for Nikon, so they jumped over to Sony. So I do think there is that. But I do think that with Sony having the biggest capital, I feel like the thing that's holding back Sony in my mind is I'm wondering if they're trying to decide what kind of company they want to be. So, am I talking to myself here? I think that losing my train of thought. I think that Sony needs to decide if the camera industry is truly where they want to go after. I think they have been for a while just really swimming in that blue ocean of mirrorless market, and they've really put a name out for themselves over the last 10 years or so in the camera industry, and they've made some incredible cameras. But it's looking a little bit to me like they're now trying to protect more of their cinema line, more so than even Canon and Nikon, because, well, Nikon doesn't have a cinema line to protect, and Canon cinema line, I mean, it's not as prestigious as, say, like the Ari or even Sony at this point. All right, Long Rider. Nikon needs a $2,500 competitive camera. Sony needs some new body designs. Canon needs price conscientious, cheaper lenses. I agree completely. I do think that that is where I will sit with Nikon. I feel like Nikon, as of lately, has been making the right moves as far as like the Z9 was a great step and a bold step in the right direction. Great price. In general, sorry, my son's playing. I don't want to get a copyright strike. But I think the Z9 was a bold, smart choice, well priced, and it got a lot of people talking. But if they cannot take that buzz and follow it up with, like he said, like Long Riders has said, a $2,500 competitive camera, then what are we even talking about? Now, as far as I know, maybe the Z8 is going to be coming out. I think that would be like a direct competitive to the R5. That's probably the next one on the docket. at least the next big one. So if they do something big with that, that's great, but they have to keep up the supply chain issues, or else the Nikon Z9 is just going to be an amazing one-time camera. Now, as far as Canon goes, yeah, we'll go into that in a bit. But Long Rider, so you say Sony needs some new body designs. What do you mean by that? Do you kind of agree that they need to go a little bit bigger? Because one thing that bothers me about Sony, and one of my complaints was, I don't like the Type A card slot. Not because I think it's necessarily a bad piece of technology, but because there's really nobody supporting it lately, or period. And you get a, slower card than the Type B, and you only have a 160 gig option. I think if you're going to have a camera like the Sony A7 R5 that is going to have 100 megapixels, you're going to need to go up to that Type B. At least that's the way I think. I think that they're holding their cameras back by not putting that card in there. So anybody besides Long Rider want to talk to me? I see some people here. I was interested to see if this 8:15 time slot would work for everybody. I know it's like 9:15 New York time, so I thought that it would maybe be after dinner for some folks. And sometimes we get some people from Dubai and Asia and Europe, and those people may just be waking up as well. So I don't know. I thought maybe give this a shot instead of the Saturday morning. If you're here watching, please join the chat. We're talking about Canon, Sony versus Nikon, and which ones that we think are going to be best positioned for the future going forward, and which one's positioned the best right now. Join in the chat, hit that like button, get this out to more people. Hey, and Australia. Jason, what's going on, man? Glad you're here. So people waking up. Exactly. So that was part of the reason, to be able to bring the entire crew together. So what is your take, Jason? I think a lot of this stems my thought process. I feel like Nikon made a big splash with their firmware update. And I think we had David Osler, who's a big Australian. uh, oh, yeah, Australian guy who is like very big on Sony, and with him coming out as well as me and saying, "Hey, I want to have a big nice firmware updates. I want these cameras to completely be, continuously be refreshed and everything." Sorry, I'm going to reading it as well. But basically, we want Sony to be refreshing their cameras as much as, say, Nikon and Canon has been over the last couple of years. And I think that's a big deal, especially if we look at the time period right now. I mean, the supply chain issues are holding everybody back. And why, if you cannot get new cameras out there, or you can't keep the supply even for the cameras that you do have, why not keep your brand awareness out there by adding more and more firmware updates and continually making your cameras better? That's partial my thinking here. Jason says, I am loving the competition. Tried the R5C recently and loved it, to be honest. Nice. Okay. Yeah, I was very interested in that camera. I know you're a big Sony guy. You have the Sony A7 IV, as well as the FX6, if I'm not mistaken. And one more, I might be confusing another one. That's interesting. So what did you like about the R5C? And so Long Rider set up here, when I asked him, what does he mean by a new camera design or a new body design? He said better LCD screens, for sure. Built-in grip at the top tier. So, for example, like an A1 Mark II, you think should have a built-in grip. I think if they do a built-in grip at the top tier, then there's no reason not to go with those bigger card slots. And, I don't know. I think if your camera is that big, and the way Sony's able to cool things already, I mean, they have the processing and the power to make something absolutely nuts. if you're here in the chat, join in. If you're watching or you just want to listen, that's cool too. But if you are just listening, make sure to hit that like button so we can get more and more people in here and we can talk and get more perspectives than just this guy. I was very impressed by the R5C. From what I saw, I've never used it, and hopefully Jason can kind of give us a little bit more insights on what he's thinking here. Sorry, Longrider said, I'm guessing, I would like to see two A1s, two A1s and A1 and an A1 Pro with built-in grip. So two A1s, an A1 and A1 Pro with built-in grip. That could work. Be interesting. I never really thought of that. I don't know if they would. I'm just wondering at that level, how big is the market that you would be able to divide that even further? Because I already think you have somewhat of an issue going on with the R3 and R1 and supposedly the A9 Mark III that is coming out. Like, can you divide it even further up there at the top to say we're going to give, an A1, two A1s? So if you did that, I think you should basically get rid of the A9 Mark III and bring the price down by about, $6,000 for the Pro and $5,000 for the non-Pro, maybe. I don't know. Jason said the low light performance was pretty decent. Recorded 8K RAW for a mini dock, and it performed very well with the RF glass. Was not a fan of the autofocus, but that's most likely Sony fanboy user era. One of the things that I really do like about Canon, from using Canon in the past and moving back and forth between the two, I actually have my Canon EOS R still, and I've kept some of my glass. So I'm not like opposed to buying the right body for the right task. But one thing I do like about Canon, and it's not necessarily just about their autofocus, it's about just the functionality of their screen. Their screens essentially work how you would expect them to work. You can press pretty much anything on it. Whereas with Sony, a lot of times I find myself not exactly sure where the touchscreen begins and the buttons are needed as well. So I get a little bit, not confused, but if I'm been using my Canon and I'm just wanting to press and change my ISO or something really simple, then I get a little bit weirded out by just the way they work sometimes. So sometimes if I am in a groove of Sony, then I kind of lose track of Canon and vice versa. One thing that did impress me about the R5C, besides pretty much everything, but one of the things that really impressed me was about Canon in the R5C is it looks like they really put everything they could into that camera to a certain degree. I mean, they didn't give you C-Log 2 from my recollection, but they gave you pretty much everything else. And I know a lot of people dogged them for the, 8K 60 fiasco, needing, certain lenses wouldn't work if you're on battery power or the battery would just get sucked up too fast. I get that, but I was impressed that, hey, Canon was saying, look, we're going to just unlock this thing. And some of the functions may not work perfect, but we're giving you the best of the best that this Sony or this R5 can do. So I was very impressed with the philosophy of Canon there. And I hope that other companies keep that philosophy as well. Long Road said, I shoot an A9 and I love the smaller compact body. I was walking around the woods with the 200-600, holding it in one hand, so easy to move around with smaller and lighter. But some like the bigger fill. That's what she said. Sorry. Inappropriate jokes. So my son's going to be getting put to sleep and everything. So if you hear a baby crying, apologies. That's just what happens. Sorry, I got off of my joke and then started thinking of something else. So Long Rider, I know you just bought a pretty incredible lens. Is that the 200-600 or what? Didn't you get like a 600 It was like a $13,000 lens. It was pretty nuts. I'm pretty sure it was a prime, which is absolutely insane. I don't mind the smaller bodies of the Sony. I think they feel very sturdy in the hand. 600 f4. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I like the smaller bodies as far as that goes. I'm not opposed to the smaller body. What I am opposed to is them maybe not giving you, the best functionality out of a camera just because you want to keep something small. So I guess that's my biggest worry is, I think that type A cards right now are just not working. Um, and maybe they will eventually, and maybe they would have if this whole craziness with the supply chains didn't just completely screw things up. Night. Um, because I just feel like nobody else is adopting it, and if nobody else adopts it, then we're not going to get any cheaper cards, and essentially we're pretty much most people are going to be stuck with SD cards. And if you have a very high megapixel camera, then you're going to be held back by the slower SD cards or the very small sizes of the type A. So hopefully it turns around, but in the recent time or right now, it doesn't look like that is a good idea. Okay, so firmware updates are a must. Thank you, Leslie. Am I saying? Yeah, Leslie. Thank you for. I say that surprise. I'm thinking that is a female name. I'm not sure, but by my analytics, you're very rare on my channel. So welcome. I guess Leslie can be a guy's name too. That's by my analytics. That's more likely. Uh, firmware updates are a must for cameras. I do think that firmware updates, especially what Nikon is doing right now, I mean, I think this should put Sony on notice. To me, it made me notice Nikon way more than I ever had before. Not that I didn't think the Z9 was already a great camera, I did, but just the philosophy of, hey, we're going to, improve this camera, past what most people had already bought this camera, and we're going to make it better and better and better. It really showed me like that they're wanting to improve and do better. My A7S III, it hasn't been improved in a long time, and I love my A7S III, but it's upsetting a little bit. They don't have animal eye animal eye autofocus in video, and the A7 IV has it, and I think the ZVE10 has it, or the ZV1. I'm not exactly sure which one, but like to me, that's confusing. Why would you not add that to the A7S III, which is your flagship video camera, or the A1, which is your flagship all around camera? Things like that are fairly annoying. And I do think that they could add waveforms and stuff like that, that it's easily addable. I'm not a programmer or engineer, but I think it's easy to somewhat add those in firmware, and I don't know why they're not doing it. And to me, it just kind of makes me feel like maybe I don't know, maybe Sony doesn't care as much about their camera company as the fans care about their cameras. Does that sound bad? I'm gonna cut here off really quick. Anybody else here? We're gonna keep this chat going. If you're here and you would like to chat, please chat. Send some stuff in. Hit the like button and get this out to some more people. I do want to go on and talk about Canon, because kind of touched on. Jason said, keen for false color in camera for Sony. They just don't have it and not sure why. Canon R5C and C70 has it. Yeah, they do. And yeah, that's another thing. Like, why are they not adding things like that? And I think that that's my biggest worry. I was talking about this in the beginning, and I think it might have been just me and Long Rider at the time. Kind of going along the theme of who's poised to, reign supreme over the other camera companies. And this is just talking talking back and forth. Just because one company's at the top doesn't mean it's going to be the best company. And it doesn't mean that there's not plenty of room for every other company. I think it's great for one company to go on top and then be knocked back to number 2 or 3 and vice versa, back and forth. Competition helps everybody. I think if you're part of the big 3, Nikon, Canon, or Sony, you're more likely got a great camera on your hands. So this isn't about saying one company's better than another. But with Sony, I'm wondering if there's kind of a position where they're trying to decide which kind of camera company they want to be. Because I don't feel like Canon is crippling their cameras as much as they were, like the R5C Jason is talking about. The R5C, for all intents and purposes, the C70, I don't know who would choose the C70 over the R5C. Not that, I guess there's some benefits still, but the vast majority of people, they at least put all the specs in the R5C and they didn't worry about the C70. The people who really need the C70, need that more cinema style camera, want the dual gain ISO and the extra dynamic range, which I think is a great camera, don't get me wrong. But the people who really want that are going to go get that. They didn't worry about, diminishing the R5C in order to protect the C70. And I don't think that Canon really, to my knowledge, Canon doesn't have as big of a cinema lineup, at least on the very, very high end, as Sony, like the Sony Venice cameras, and you have the RE and the Red. If I'm not mistaken, those are quite a bit bigger in the cinema department, or am I completely off on that? Maybe the the C300, maybe those are way bigger and more popular than I'm thinking. But to my knowledge, I think that Sony maybe is protecting their cinema lineup more than Canon is at this point. And Nikon doesn't even have a cinema lineup. So Nikon is all in on their mirrorless, DSLR style camera. Sorry, I stop every now and then because I feel like maybe some people will chat and give a different perspective, so it's not me just monologuing. Thoughts on if Canon will bring a square box style camera like the Komodo C70 to the R5C mix? Win-win. Hey, Mr. J Nice, what's going on, man? Nice to see you. So let me show you this. Let's see here. Go to screen share. Canon rumors. So you are right. See, there we go. Canon right here is announcing new firmware for C300 Mark III and C500 Mark II. So there they are with their more and more firmware. Come on, Sony, where you at? But to go off of what you just asked me, Jason, the C50, this is possibly going to be what we're looking for here, or what you're looking for. There's a patent out for a more box style camera, and this is called the C50. Now, it was rumored back in 2020, but things have been, delayed, less so in 2022. So, no IBIS, Super 35, 4K sensor. So that's kind of the idea here now. So I believe this is what the C50 was, and now they're calling it the C5. So maybe dropping the R. That is possibly what is going on here now. That essentially it will be these specs, and here's some of the models that it has. So they may be going for a more box style camera. Maybe it'll have a similar specs to the R5C, but it will do so more with the box style body. Possibly. I don't know. They're pretty all in on 8K. Does that answer your question, Jason? Let's see. So we went over be very popular, I would imagine. Yeah, I'm not going to pretend like I know as much. I I'm not going to pretend like I know as much about box style cinema cameras. I think Jason, you work on some pretty huge projects, bigger than I've ever worked on projects. Jason, if you haven't checked out his YouTube channel, it's pretty incredible. Jason's quality is nuts. So if you haven't checked out his channel, go check out his channel. He's really good at what he does. You can learn a lot from Jason. Me, I can just tell you the news pretty much. Um, but I'm not gonna pretend like I know how popular it would be. But I mean, Canon does have some great colors. I know a lot of people do love Canon, and I, generally speaking, really enjoy my Canon camera as well. So so we will see. Mr. J Nice says, I love my Canon R3. I know a lot of people love that. I mean, Gerald, I mix up Jared Undone and Gerald Poland all the time. But Gerald Poland just switched over to Canon for the R3. Pretty awesome. Interesting. Did that change anybody's minds, or not change their minds, but make you look at Canon in a different light for somebody like him to switch over? Now, granted, he has the money and the ability to switch over. Most people don't. Longrider said that Canon R3, a gorgeous camera, is a gorgeous camera. I picked it up in Adorama. So yeah, he didn't buy it. I'm assuming when he says he picked it up, he just literally picked it up. Longrider's a big Sony guy, so I'm thinking that that's what he meant, that he actually was there, because Longrider is from New York. Longrider is one of the guys. He's a wildlife photographer. He sells some of his work as well. I forgot, you said if people want to check out your work, there was some wildlife channel that you said buys your pictures quite often. If you could put that in the chat, Longrider, because that was at the very end of our last live stream, and I did not get to get that out there in front of people. But I would like to see more of your work as well. But yeah, with Gerald Poland switching over to Canon, I bet a lot of people were very surprised that he decided to do that. But I felt like he's kind of been flirting with that idea for a while now. I mean, he's kind of been like one of the people that Leslie the Bird Nerd. Cool, Leslie the Bird Nerd. So we'll have to check that out, and we'll go through and we will. I mean, not like right this second. Check it out, because we could. I don't know if anybody would be down necessarily to do it right now, but if you want to see more of Longrider's work, and it might be kind of hard to just pick out which ones are which, then go to see the Leslie the Bird Nerd. She buys a lot of stock photography from Longrider. He shoots about 300 to 500 pictures a day, if I'm not mistaken. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, Longrider, but I'm pretty sure that's what you've said in the past. It's hundreds of pictures a day. And that's probably why like an R3 would work great for you, because and like your A9 works great for you, because you don't have to worry about those crazy megapixel range. That's pretty nuts. What were we talking about before we went over there? Adorama. He said Adorama. They called me the other day, and do y'all have this happen to you guys? They said like they have personal shoppers out now. They're like, I'm your personal shopper. I was like, I really like you, Adorama. That's very nice of you. They were supposed to send over some stuff about being affiliate marketing and things like that with them. If you are here and you're watching and you're enjoying yourself, make sure you hit that like button. We'll get this out to more people. We'll get the conversation moving and going even more so. So for the people that are in the chat and want to chat, are you a Nikon person? Are you a Sony person, Canon person? Let me know in the comments. And if so, like, what do you think Sony needs to do to be like number one, for example? And then what do you think Canon needs to do? Like, what is holding them back? And if you were like the CEO of Canon, or, Sony sensor or whatever, Sony's imaging division, like what would your idea be to be the best of the best? Like, as a fan, what do you want them to do that you think they can be number one with? And Nikon, the same idea. Mr. J Nice said, I shot the Sony A1 a couple weeks ago. It was an awesome camera. Yeah, I'm I would love to get my hands on an A1. Jason, don't you have an A1 as well? I know you had the A7 IV and the FX6, I want to say, but I'm not sure if you had the A1. A1 is a pretty awesome camera. I do wonder, and that's just another camera that I think, I mean, it was like the best of the best when it came out. I still think it is probably, I mean, arguably it's the best stills camera. It's the fastest with the highest megapixels in its class. I mean, it's still somewhat the top of the top when it comes to stills, but we've barely had any extra support. There's been no firmware updates that keep getting this thing better and better and better. We need to be able to feel like we're going to be able to rely on Sony to continue to give us improvements in our cameras. And it makes everybody very excited. I know the Sony A7S III, when it first got S-Cinetone, that was like a huge deal because finally, Sony, I don't even use S-Cinetone, but I remember it felt like a big deal when the FX3 came out, had the S-Cinetone, and then it went over to the A7S III. Like everybody was super buzzed and excited about it. And then nothing. And I just find it odd that you have a camera that's supposed to be your video centric camera like the A7S III or your FX3. You don't have waveforms. You're calling the FX3 a cinema camera and it doesn't have waveforms in it. I mean, or false colors or things like that. Like, how are you even trying to consider or act like that is part of your cinema lineup? I know it doesn't have internal NDs or anything. You can get away with that saying, hey, this is our small camera on the go, but at least give professional software and professional tools that you can offer in that camera if you want to call it part of the cinema world. Jason says, I do not have the A1. I haven't even tried it. I feel YouTubers have lost steam with it. I never see anything about it. Yeah. And I really think, and that's kind of going along the point that I was just talking about, was if Sony really wants to be on top, which is, who am I? I'm not anybody to do like they're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They know more than me, but I just feel like they somewhat have lost their mojo, or maybe they've lost their hunger to, really deliver. Not that they haven't had incredible cameras, but I feel like over the last, if you were to ask me like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, which camera company is going to be number one in 5 years, I would have hand down said, oh yeah, Sony, Sony's where it's at. Now, I don't know. Now it's definitely a toss up. The Sony rep came to Chicago and I shot some models and tried the 70 to 200 G Master. And that is something that Sony's been doing. They have been investing very heavily in their new G Master Part 2. Or G Master Part 2. Well, their second generation G Masters. Maybe that is where they feel like their money needs to be spent. And maybe it is because, a lot of that glass was getting long in the tooth and Canon was coming out with some very exciting glass. Maybe they just feel like that's where they need to focus their energy. And, to that same point, if you were to go back about 2 years ago, we were all talking about how Canon, or 3 years ago maybe, we were talking about how Canon didn't really have any pro bodies and all this crazy glass was coming out and everybody's, clamoring for a pro body. And now, they look like wow. You had the R6, which is an incredible camera for the price. You had the R5, which had a huge, terrible situation with the launch. But, from what I've seen over, the last 2 years, them improving the overheating and all that, I mean, it seems to be a pretty great camera now as well. You had the R3, which impressed a lot of people. And now you have the R5C, which to me is a very impressive hybrid cinema camera. So maybe we'll be looking at the same situation in 2 years with Sony and say, wow, I'm glad they supported their glass and now they're all in on their bodies. That's possible. Jason said, "Do you think if there will be a do you think if there will be a Sony A7 IV, where do you where do you even go from the A7S III or A1 Mark II specs, etc.?" Okay. So my theory with the A7S IV, some people think that it's going to completely dissolve into the FX3 lineup. I don't know about that. I think that the A7S IV or A7S III has been a very successful camera. I think the FX3 has been a very successful camera. So I'm not sure they want to drop that. What I do think that they're possibly waiting for is, since the S has usually been known for its very great low light capabilities, I think they may be wanting to use that new sensors technology. It's a new stacked sensor that they just released a patent about, or not a patent, but I guess did like a big news statement about, saying that essentially the way they're able to set up the different stacks, that they're able to double the saturation, basically double the light saturation on the sensor. So theoretically speaking, you could get a high resolution sensor, say a 50 megapixel sensor that has the same low light capabilities as a 25 megapixel sensor. So if I'm looking at specs and I see the A7S IV, then I think you have to go 8K at this point. I think it's going to be kind of, Canon's going 8K big, Nikon is as well, and I think Sony, if you're going to have like a flagship, camera that's in the video department, I think it needs to have 8K. But if you want to keep with the tradition of having a very low light capable camera, then I think that's the kind of sensor you put in it. So maybe you have a 45 megapixel sensor, maybe it shoots 8K, who knows at that point, 8K 60 at least, and it also has pretty incredible low light with the dynamic range possibility. So that's where I see it going with that. The A1 Mark II, I mean, I think it really depends. If the A9 Mark III comes out at the end of this year, like people are speculating, I think that is going to be their World Cup camera. I think that the R1 is possibly going to be there as well. I think that's going to be a World Cup camera, maybe prototype form. And then that means that the A1 Mark II won't be coming out until 2024. So I think maybe just a redesigned body. You're definitely going to get a faster camera. AK 120. I mean that's 2024. It's really hard to even fathom what that means. Sony says, Long Rider said, Sony makes money from almost every other camera company sensors. Maybe they are not hungry, and they make EVF also for other camera companies. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the big thing that I'm wondering. I'm wondering if Sony is looking at their, or a CEO, a suit at Sony is looking at their statements and saying, well, these camera bodies are, they're not maybe a huge moneymaker for them. The camera industry shrinking. It's a smaller and smaller pie. Maybe they say, well, we make the best sensors in the world. That's our, big moneymaker. I think it's actually bigger than their video game division as far as revenue goes, or maybe profit. So if that's maybe their big division, they think, well, we're making the most money off of these sensors, and we're putting amazing sensors in all the cell phones, and we're putting amazing sensors in other camera manufacturers. Maybe they're kind of not necessarily phasing out their camera division, but like you said, maybe they're not as hungry to be a big top contender in the camera industry as they maybe once were. I hope that's not the case, because I really like Sony. I like competition. But it makes me think that maybe Canon and Nikon, with their big legacy, is just saying, hey, this is what we are. We're a camera company first. And that's kind of who they've been over the last, I don't know, what are they, like 100-year-old company almost? Um, and maybe that's the way it's shaken out. Mr. J Nice says, how about higher frame rates with a fan for the Sony A7 IV? And they said, how about Sony rumors going? How about Sony rumors going to medium format? I mean, that's possible. Maybe that's where they're looking to go. But I do find it odd. Like, what's their plans with the medium format situation? Considering, I mean, there's so much glass in their E mount lineup. You have so much glass. Um, so I mean, going to medium format after going full frame, I think your best bet, if you're Sony, is to invest in even more processing power, do a little bit more with computational photography and videography, or at least give the options for that. I don't necessarily know if you need to go medium format at this point, but we'll see. They make the sensors already. That's true. They do make the sensors, but the glass, I think, is the big holdup at this point. But maybe if they move over there, then they can bring Tamron with them. It's possible. I know another thing that they could be waiting for is the curved sensor. Supposedly a curved sensor, you're not needing as much glass, just by the nature of the curved sensor, and you're able to make lighter lenses because you don't need as much glass. So if that's the case, then maybe they have a curved sensor that's a medium format camera, because we know they like to keep things kind of petite, and you'll have some fairly light glass to go along with their medium format cameras. And if that's the case, then that's very interesting, and that might be where Sony starts putting their energy. Long Rider, what do you think of the Long Rider? Jason, what do you think of those specs that I kind of mentioned with the A7S4? Do you think that sounds kind of about right, or do you have a different thought process in mind? And Long Rider, what do you think about, you said maybe they're not as hungry. Do you suspect that that's the case, that maybe they're just starting to make so much money from the other stuff that they could be looking at their, the bottom dollar, or somebody could be looking at the bottom dollar and saying, I'm not sure we want to just, maybe we're not just going to be a camera company. We're going to be a sensor company. I hope that's not the case. Maybe that's too alarmist thinking right there. If you're here and you haven't, join the chat or hit the like button. Either way, supports this channel. I really appreciate everybody being here. I'm glad we're able to get this conversation going, so I'm not just talking to myself. Leslie said, Sony has stepped up with their glass plus their third-party glass companies. Yeah, I mean, that is a huge thing that's going for Sony, but I guess the question is that, I guess we were just talking about that with their G Master Mark II, I guess, glass. But their third-party glass companies, they've kind of always kept their line open, and that's kind of been what their plan has been, is to keep that line or keep their mount open, and it made third parties really start to jump in and support them early. I don't know if that's necessarily anything different. I'm not really sure. Long Rider said, hard to know. Sony likes to make big splashes and leap way ahead, then go dormant. Yeah, that is funny. That is interesting that they do that too, because I have noticed that in the past, that they kind of do exactly like what Long Rider is saying. And I guess that wouldn't be an issue for me if they would be supporting their cameras in the medium term, or like a intermediate term. So if you're gonna just kind of go dormant and not maybe show a big camera and then drop something, then at least give firmware updates and keep your name and brand out there really coming big for you, because it lets channels like mine, or people who are even more hyper focused in on Sony cameras, It allows us to do your job for you in a way, and we talk about cameras, and we love to talk about cameras. It keeps us excited about your brand, and we'll talk about it for you if you're exciting us. Sounds bad too. Mr. J Nice, they make the Micro Four Third sensor for the OM Systems newest camera. They make so many sensors. And that's kind of, I guess, my issue. It's not an issue, but that's my concern with Sony is they make so many sensors. They make so much money off of their sensors. I mean, is it necessary for them to be in the camera industry? I think with Nikon and Canon, they feel it's very necessary to be a camera company. Sony, I'm not so sure. You know, I think there is the element of, hey, we're making money other places. Maybe we don't need to be the camera people. Hopefully not. Long Rider, they had the stacked sensor in the A9 almost 5 years ago. By now, all their cameras should be stacked sensors. 100%. I've thought about that. So the A9, if we're going full frame, it's the A9 Mark 1 and Mark 2 and the A1 stacked sensors. So that's the only ones that I know of full frame. If y'all can humor me for just 2 seconds, I'm going to go I have a water right over here. I'm going to go get it. Humor me 2 seconds. Talk amongst yourself. I'll come back and read everything. Sorry, my throat was dry. Been monologuing for almost an hour now. It's funny how time passes when you're having fun. Okay. Long Rider said Canon and Nikon only just released SAC sensors. Yeah, that's true. Like, to me, since they're so far ahead of the game with their sensor technology, it really just is a matter of will and decision for them. What makes the most business sense? And that is the question that I feel like Sony has to answer. And it makes me wonder because what Long Rider just said with talking about the stacked sensors, to me, every one of their cameras should have stacked sensors by now. I agree. I mean, obviously, things cost money, so it's kind of hard to say. But I do feel like I worry about that new stacked sensor tech, because they're talking about it like, hey, we can double the light saturation. But I look at that and I say, well, if you had that announcement, I think it was back in, I want to say it was 2014 or 15, they had, we have stacked sensors. And then it took a couple years and it came out in the A9. And then, I don't know, 5 years later, it's only in 3 of your full frame cameras. So you want us to get excited about your new stacked sensor technology that can double light saturation, but when is any of this going to come to any of your cameras that most people can get their hands on? Or is this only going to be reserved for like the best of the best in the A1 Mark II or something like that? I don't know. Like Longer said, seems like a wasted opportunity. Mr. J Nice said, I heard the curved sensor won't work with existing lenses. To my knowledge, they will not. There's probably some converter that's possible. I'm not sure. But what I was talking about is if they decide to go medium format, then they could use the curved sensor. So maybe if they're going to go medium format, maybe they will go with the curved sensor. And that will be because they're not going to be using existing glasses for a medium format camera anyways. So that's how I see Sony going up to medium format, is maybe when they crack the curved, Anyways, when they crack that sensor technology, maybe that's when they want to jump up the medium format. If they really want to be a camera company, which I'm starting to worry about and wonder about. Um, I feel like, and I talked a lot of smack about the A7 IV. So I don't know if Jason's still here. I know he's a busy guy, big channel, so he may be he's starting his day, I think, there in Australia. So it's possible that he's not in the chat anymore, or he's just listening. He has the A7 IV. He loves it. Says it's a great camera. It definitely I mean, it seems like it does record higher quality 4K in most usable ISO ranges than the A7S III. The A7S III is great. I love my A7S III, but it really has to be at its native ISOs to really get the best out of it. Right. So I'm not saying the A7 IV isn't a great camera, but that being said, I felt like that was a wasted opportunity. I felt like they really had. It looked like they were playing catch up to the R6 at that point. Like I was really confused by that. I think that was when I first started to wonder, what is Sony doing here? Because I didn't need them to protect the A7S III. I needed them to make the best A7 IV they could. That's the most accessible camera for most people. And I wanted it to, bring out the new LCD screen. It needed that. I wanted to have a full frame 4K 60. I think it could have used that. I think that they really could have showed out, and I think it's a great camera already, but I think it could have been. I think spec sheet wise, it could have blew the R6 out of the water, and they didn't do that. So that was kind of a little confusing to me. Longrider said, I was reading about the curved sensor, and the whole point is what you can do with new lenses, no aberrations or corrections for distortion. Yeah. And Jay Christina talks about it quite a bit as well, and I think he knows what he's talking about. He basically says that you do not need as much glass, because partially the glass, if I'm not mistaken, some people can maybe correct me, but some of the glass that is in a lens today is to, because if you look at, I guess the front of a lens, a lot of times it's more like a bulbous shape. It has, even if it's inside, is, it's coming in at a certain way. And basically another piece of glass is flattening out the image. The way our eyes work and the way light comes in, it hits, basically just comes and hits the back of your, eye from through the pupil, and it is like a curve inside, and that's the way the light hits, and that's the way your brain interprets it. So that being said, I think there's some glass that can be taken out, and you can get even higher apertures and things like that out of these lenses, and you can do so at a lighter and cheaper cost for, at least for the camera company. But correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody's heard anything different about curved sensors. But apparently it's going to be a big deal when and if it happens. Sure, when. But by who, I guess, is the question. Longrider said 4K 60 is another big miss for Sony. All their cameras should do that at a minimum. As a minimum. Yeah. I think all their new cameras should have done that. Yeah, it was kind of a confusing move from Sony. So, and that's something right there that I think that could be added in a firmware update. I don't think, with that processor, I would think that they can offer 4K 60, even if they do pixel binning. So I don't know why use some pixel binning or whatever the case is and get 4K 60, full frame in the A7 IV. That could be a firmware update that gets people talking. It could be great. You go do that, and then maybe you add RAW to the A7S III and the FX3. That differentiates itself. And you say, oh, there's a RAW video in their more high end, cinema style camera with the A7S III, and the A7 IV gets a boost with the 4K 60 full frame. I think you could do that in firmware. I mean, not a software engineer or anything, but I think that's possible. So we kind of went over and kind of to summarize just some of the thoughts here with Sony. Oh, actually, I want to touch on one thing. Long Rider, you were giving me such a hard time about my complaints about Sony, and then now you're here in the chat and you're like bringing up all these great points, but you're complaining about Sony yourself. I'm just kind of, what's going on, Long Rider? I actually saw a comment from Long Rider. I think he had deleted it, but I still got to see it, and it was like, wow, man, that seemed pretty harsh. And he was like, sell all your Sony gear. We don't need a whiner on our team. And I'm like, I was just talking about what I think they could do better. There's nothing wrong with trying to improve things on a camera company that you love. Anyways, I thought it was funny. Long Rider, not to throw you under the bus, but I guess I just did. Okay. Mr. J Nice, Sony keeps the competition working hard. Yeah, that I want to keep them keeping the competition working hard. I think that is where I'm at, because I think Nikon and Canon have been working hard, and now Sony needs to step up their game. At least that's how I see it. Longer said, I can do it. Talking about criticizing Sony, he said, you're just a punk kid. No arguments there, Long Rider. I am just a punk kid. But know that if I ever make any criticism video about really any camera company, overall, unless it's Pentax, whatever it is, just joking. But most of the time I'm making that criticism because I want the camera company to do well. And I know I have a relatively small channel compared to so many people like Jason, who may or may not still be in the chat. So I have a very small voice, and Sony may not listen to me, but I do think that at least if the stories about Sony are true, which is what, at least in the past, that Tony Northrup and Chelsea and Tony Northrup had talked about, how Sony seemed to really be listening. Sony seemed to be there, and they really seemed like they were trying to learn. If that is true, then I really hope that they listen to the community, and that's why I say something, and I hope that it gets picked up and talked about by people who have more reach than me, and Sony can hear, hey, we want more out of you. We expect more out of you. If we want, what Canon and Nikon are doing with these firmware updates, we want some improvements on our cameras as well. Leslie said, the phones are producing better cameras every year and are a big market, so you can see why camera companies are struggling. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've talked about that ad nauseum before, but you are right, Leslie. The truth is going to hurt a lot of people, and I'm not saying that they are on par just yet with camera companies. They're not, but I will say that if you go back 5 years ago or 6 or 7 years ago, and you look at the cell phone image that you could get out of a cell phone back then, image within video quality and image quality with stills, and you compare it to a camera back then, say in 2015, I mean, there's just no getting around it. Like, cell phones, they sucked completely. But if you look at it now, they've improved more so than camera companies have, in my mind. Especially in the stills photography world, because they already had. You can get a nice camera from back in 2015. And what did they have? Did they have the Canon 1DX Mark II back then, or Even if it was the 1DX, just the regular 1DX, the Canon 1DX was an amazing camera. If you get that camera today, you're going to get some incredible images out of that camera with that glass. But if you get a iPhone from 2015, you're going to get really terrible pictures. If you get an iPhone from 2021 or maybe what's coming up in 2022, you're going to get some pretty great stuff. So they're really going to have to step up their game in my mind. And I think the higher end cameras are really where it's going to be held. Long Rider says, my girlfriend, my Long Rider, stop lying. You don't have a girlfriend. I'm just kidding. My girlfriend V is listening. She says, I'm a social bully. Leave you alone. Then, yes, you do have a girlfriend, and she's a very nice girl. Very nice lady, I shall say. Thank you, V. I appreciate you saying that. So you definitely there, you exist. Long Rider did not make you up like a Moon Knight character. Sorry, that was a random Moon Knight. Has anybody watched Moon Knight? It's pretty great. Sony makes sensors for cell phones, Mr. J. Nice said. That is true. Leslie said, have to go, folks. Got an appointment. Well, by all means, go to your appointment. I'm here talking, chatting as long as we pretty much want to chat. But I mean, we are just over an hour. So maybe we will wrap it up fairly soon. But I'm here. It's, I don't necessarily have to rush. So this time period works a little bit better for me than Saturdays. Question. I wonder if Long Rider's gonna have any back and forth about me saying he doesn't have a girlfriend. Okay. I'm just anticipating that chat. Do you guys like the Thursday night time slot, or maybe it's Friday morning for you, depending on where you are? Do you like that better than me doing live streams on Saturday mornings, or does Saturday mornings work best for you, or do you not care? I do feel like we've gotten more people in the chat and more interactions with Thursday night, but that could just be topical. Mr. J Nice says Thursday, so we got one for Thursday. Okay, cool. Appreciate that. I try to make live streams like an every other week thing because the way my channel is working right now, it's live streams are so when it comes to helping out your channel. What really helps with a live stream is if you can take a little snippet out of your live stream and post it later, and you can maybe do that once or twice throughout the week. That really helps to grow your channel. The way I view live streams is that I get to interact with the community, and of course I want to grow the community as well, but it's really a way of me getting to know you guys better and give you guys a voice as well and interact, because I enjoy live streams. But I don't know if it is me growing my channel, or it is growing my channel as much from just like a subscriber count or reaching new audiences. So the way I've been doing live streams is usually like on an every other week basis. I don't see me doing much more than that at this point, but that may change in the future depending on how many people continue to watch. And if you're here and you've seen my channel before, or you enjoy this type of content, hit that subscribe button if you don't mind. It really helps out the channel. It's very It's very I very much appreciate it. It definitely it just kind of feels like a pat on the back and makes me feel like I'm doing a good job. And so I really hope you decide to subscribe. No pressure. Either way, if you just come here and watch the videos, that helps a whole lot as well too. So if you like, subscribe, appreciate it. If you don't, that's cool too. I think I made a joke saying Long Rider didn't have a girlfriend and he has left. That was the last straw for Long Rider. Either that or V has gotten onto him so much that he no longer wants to talk because you're a social media bully, Long Rider. Thank you, Mr. J Nice. You're doing a good job. I enjoy your videos too. Well, I appreciate it so much. I like anything else, sometimes you go through times where you don't want to make a video as much as the other times. Partially, you know, when there's not as much camera news and you really feel like you're having to reach for your topics more. I think that's where I get in a position where I'm like, oh, I can't make a video. And some of that when that happens, you know, that's too where I like to come into the live stream and just chat with the community, and it lifts me up. You guys lift me up, give me the energy to keep going and make this thing really something that I hope we can all enjoy. But I really appreciate you, Mr. J Nice. I appreciate everybody who has shown up and commented, even Long Rider. Now, I like to give a Long Rider a hard time. He likes to give me a hard time. I think most of the time he means well from it. So if you're here and you haven't yet, hit that like button. Very much appreciate it. It goes out to more and more people. If you can join the conversation, that would be great. Maybe drop in the comment section below. Let me know, where do you see the future of the camera industry? Do you think it's going to be Long Rider, dude? Gotta say, Long Rider just gave me a $5 super chat, and I guess for $5, Long Rider, you can bully me as much as you want. I'm so cheap. No, but thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It definitely helps out the channel, and I appreciate anybody just showing up. But thank you, Long Rider, for throwing me a little bit extra. I really appreciate that. Long Rider says, "Don't ever take me seriously. I'm a big ball breaker." I rarely take you seriously. I don't mean that in any kind of negative way, but I what I mean is, I believe most of the time when I see you say something that you are meaning it in a fun way, and you're not being mean. And V, I really appreciate you getting on to him. Maybe that was a part of the reason he threw me $5, and if that's the case, I really much appreciate you, V. And make sure he goes and buys you something nice too. So Long Rider's gonna be really mad at me now. Yeah, I want the best for every camera company. I want to see them do the best. And that's why I make the videos. Not all the time. I make the videos because I want people to watch and grow this thing. But when I make a criticism video, it's for hoping that they improve, because I want my camera to be amazing. I want your Nikon camera, if you shoot Nikon, to be amazing. I want Canon cameras to be great, and the better they are, the more it's gonna push competition. Hopefully, not push anybody away from the industry. Sony. Okay. One more topic. It kind of goes along the same vein. Fujifilm. I think that Fujifilm is so poised right now, perfectly positioned and situated to completely dominate the APS-C market. There's nobody that's doing APS-C in the way that they are. The Canon EOS R7, it looks like it's delayed indefinitely. It's not that it's not going to come out supposedly, but you know, they can't really keep up supplies, it seems like. So maybe 4, 5, 6 months possibly. If that's the case, and Fujifilm comes out with whatever this crazy XH2 is going to be, or XH2S, if they can get their autofocus in check, and if they can get their IBIS in check, I mean, game over. APS-C, Fujifilm, take it. You're in an open market, and you're running it. I think they're great. One thing they do need to do is get some more lenses in there too, that is more video centric, because they make great video cameras as well as stills cameras. So if they can get some faster glass in there that has better autofocusing capabilities and not as loud of motors, I think that will be very appreciative as well. Okay, so I think I am going to go now. Unless any of you have any questions, I'm here to answer your questions. But if I don't see a question that runs in right now, then I'm probably just going to call it a night. Very much appreciate all of you so much. So Mr. J Nice said, I heard a high resolution camera will be 40 megapixel and 8K video. Yeah, that is the XH Mark II, supposedly. And then there's going to be an S version that is a lower megapixels, or at least that's what I'm being told. A Long Rider says, night y'all, night all. I say y'all because I'm from the South. Night all. Well, good night, Long Rider. Enjoy your night time with V, and make sure you make it special. You hear, V? Me and you are on each other's side. We're teamed up against Long Rider. Yeah, that's what I heard too, Mr. J Nice, is that they will have a 40 megapixel camera with 8K. There was word of a DCI 8K, but if I'm not mistaken, 40 megapixels alone is not enough. But supposedly there is a 43 megapixel sensor that Sony has in the APS-C range, and if they use that sensor, it's possible maybe for DCI, but some people say that it's going to be closer to 44 megapixels that they need for that, but I'm not entirely sure on the math. So, yeah, 8K video, supposedly, and if they could do 8K 64 10-bit, 422, they did 4K 60 10-bit in 2018, I believe it was, or 19, with the XT3, long before any full-frame cameras have done that. So that is big, and I think they're poised to really destroy the market. The things that's holding them back, autofocus and lenses and IBIS. But hey, that is all for me. If you're here and you haven't subscribed, do that. I appreciate everybody being here, everybody watching, and everybody participating. Very much appreciate all you. Thanks for being here with me along this journey as I grow this channel. I hope to bring you more and more valuable content over time, and I hope that I can be here for you guys. But until next time, peace.